There are people who put AI to work and people that AI will put out of work. The Boss Mode Podcast is the ones who choose to be the boss.
Welcome back to the Boss Mode Podcast. You've got David Lee and
good old Dee Deng.
This is the first episode after the Mother's Day holiday, or after Mother's Day. Elon Musk recently posted or reposted something saying that what was it? It was mothers. The job of a mother is as important as any other job. And I believe that to be true. It was, some might say it goes without saying, but I think it bears repeating.
Absolutely.
What did you guys do for Mother's Day?
Got some nice French pastries. Finn made a cake.
Nice.
Which is a big deal because he was really like, oh, I don't know, this cake might be crap. I mean, we had one of those Insta cakes. Yeah, did that and just spent the day, watched part of Arrival. I don't know if you remember that movie.
Oh, that's a great movie.
Yeah. So that's what we did.
Yeah, Arrival was a fantastic one.
Same director as Dune.
Yep. I'm looking forward to the next coming of Dune. And interestingly, in Dune, they got rid of computers, right? So you've got the mentats that are calculating in their heads. Me, I've got these glasses on, and these glasses are calculating for me. But yeah, the mentats did it all in their heads. And they got rid of computers because I guess if you look at the Culture series, where AI eventually takes us, E&M Banks, and actually I only read, I think, the first two books in his series. Oh, I've got the third one in my car. I bought the whole collection of E&M Banks books because I'm looking forward to reading them. But in the Culture series by Banks, what you get is AI that in this civilization called the Culture, AI runs everything. So people don't have to think. Like, people don't have to work. People don't have to, like, they can just engage in creative pursuits. They don't have to work. And what is that? That's pretty much what folks are talking about when they describe UBI. And that's, I guess, Dune's way of, the Dune universe's way of preventing that scenario was to get rid of all the computers.
Was just to go full nuclear. They just nuke those son of a bitches. It's actually, you know what? Isn't it funny how I'm just scanning my mind right now, and are there any Hollywood movies or fiction that comes out of Hollywood where AI turns out in the positive? It's always pretty dystopian, isn't it? Terminator.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Minority Report. You've got Terminator, Skynet,
Black Mirror. Boy,
Ex Machina.
Yeah,
Ex Machina was
yes. That was brutal.
Ending in Ex Machina, man. Like, he saves. And spoiler alert, the
it's been out
protagonist.
For years, guys. Like, don't be upset. If you're upset about this, spoiler alert, it's been out for years. All right, so catch up.
Yeah, the protagonist saves this sentient robot that's powered by AI, and he's thinking that the two of them are going to go off and live happily ever after because she's drop dead gorgeous. She seduces him, and what does she do? She locks him in,
and then he gets eviscerated. Yeah, he does not turn out good. What's that other one with Joaquin? She, her,
she, her.
One of those ones. One of those pronouns. That didn't end up well either.
Yep. Because we cannot comprehend. Like, we're physically, our brains are not wired to understand the, I guess, everythingness of beings that are at the level of the singularity, and so we become irrelevant to them, left behind.
Yeah. And it's funny how it's no wonder that the statistics around trust in AI is where it is. You know, because pop culture's been across time. Pop culture has been sending us these messages, and you know, like for the most part, it is challenging to imagine a world where you can just pursue whatever you wish with no constraint and you know, where your basic Maslow's needs are getting met without having to work. It is a very big stretch of the imagination to be able to do so. It's it's no wonder.
Is it good for us to get rid of all constraints, though? I can't help but think, if I project myself all the way forward to us truly achieving the singularity, to humans, and let's use a different word for singularity, to humans achieving omniscience, to becoming all-powerful, to knowing everything, always, to have infinite thinking ability, infinite knowability, infinite connection. And if that level of omniscience is achieved by us, what is the one thing that we will crave? And I think that the only thing that we will crave is limitation. And so I wonder how important it is for us to appreciate the limitations that we do have and find a way to be deeply human within those limitations, even as it seemingly becomes, well, even as we enter a world of abundance. Elon Musk, and I started writing on Substack. I wrote about Elon Musk's take on the Leveling Thesis, which is one of just extreme abundance where the cost of goods drops dramatically. In a situation like that, even a token level of social security, government assistance, safety net becomes the equivalent of universal high income because costs are so low. In that scenario, what then do people do? And I think that the only thing that people crave in that scenario is meaning, which comes from, I took a masterclass.com way back when this kind of thing was novel. It was, I think, Aaron Sorkin. Yeah, Aaron Sorkin's masterclass about writing for TV or for film. And he said that you need intention and obstacle. And I think that was like this core ingredient of writing well. And I would extend the importance of intention and obstacle to just life in general. If we do not have intention and obstacle, and what is obstacle? What is intention? Intention and obstacle is limitation and desiring something beyond our limits. And that's where growth comes from. So this is, I think, so fundamental to being human. And when we are growing beyond this limitation of ourself and beyond the limitations that society and the world and everything short of the laws of physics places upon us, what we're doing is we're creating. And if we're creating, then I think we're the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah. While we're talking about movies, it's I can't help but bring to mind that one monologue that Agent Smith was giving to Neo, where he was explaining how there were very different versions of the Matrix, and the early versions was one of absolute abundance where everyone was happy all the time, and how those just miserably failed because human brains just ended up cooking themselves.
Yeah. Yep. You think about the scene in Ready Player One, the book, read the book, because in the book, you can visualize this scene for yourself. The scene where a man is strapped into a chair in a VR headset, feeling and sensing everything in virtual reality. And it is a scene of, like, what struck in my mind, what the picture that was painted in my mind was a scene of just absolute unrestrained gluttony, because he can have anything and everything he wants in extreme doses that you think, oh, great, he's getting everything he wants. That's got to be good, right? Well, no, it's not good. We need to fight for what we get, struggle for what we get. Otherwise, we turn into disgusting, I spent 15 years of my life in Korea where fat shaming is normal. So I'll just say it. We'll just turn into disgusting blobs of cellulite and fat, and just, it's not a happy place to be. That is not what it is to be human.
If we proxy current incentive models and extrapolate that out to that world that you're talking about, where there is absolute abundance, where and if we're positing that human struggle is quintessential to the human experience, how do you think that the majority of humankind would move in that world of abundance? Do you think that most of humankind would move to one where the majority of humans are excited about creating and seeing that as their opted in area of struggle towards mastery? Or do you see the majority of humans moving to the realm of gluttony and that being their choice of lifestyle? And what I mean by, let me frame this, what I mean by current incentive models, we see this a lot, mainly in I guess the most vivid example would be in sales commissions type teams, where, and I was just doing a bit of a mastermind call with a bunch of managers, and we were speaking about this and how in most people's minds there is a dollar figure in their head, their version of fuck you money. And we see this a lot in sales teams where they're commission based, where salespeople are absolutely hungry and high performing up until a certain point where they hit a certain amount of commission, and then you start getting diminishing returns. That typical, I guess, or that phenomenon where you start seeing resting on laurels or getting complacent and starting to let their foot off the pedal because they're already on easy street. So what's your take on that? Where would you, in that area of abundance, do you think us humans have the capacity to flourish in that world, to be able to handle that level of abundance? Or would it be just an overload and people would just go, well, what now?
So I cover this I cover a lot of this ground in what I call the Leveling Thesis, and it's part 2 on my Substack, where I talk about the conditions that are necessary to have more people truly living and embracing this idea of creating and being positioned and empowered to create. The unfortunate reality is that the way we have structured society, the way we have educated our young people, we have created patterns in their minds. It is baked into the sense of self for a lot of people that they just need to consume, make a lot of money to consume more. They need to check off these boxes to send signals to society. And it's less about truly creating value. And I'm certain that there are outliers, absolutely. Like you've got folks that are outliers that find a way outside of what they've learned in school to gravitate towards being net value creators instead of automatons, of cycling in, day out, doing the same thing over and over again. And there are folks who are incredibly talented as automatons, right? And heck, I was talking to a good friend of mine who is a former startup guy, right? He was an executive at a startup that was acquired. He worked as a VC. He later worked as and now he's in CEO recruiting, right? So he does placement of CEOs for large private equity firms. And he has a number. And I don't blame him for having a number, because for him, he's a highly talented individual who has worked very, very hard to achieve success in his life. And now he's at a point in his life where he wants to find a way to put in the minimum, take out a very good living, and he has a number. And once he hits that number, he's going to be out there traveling the world, hunting, exploring, living. And that's good. And I'll be happy for him, because I think it makes sense to have a number and escape the rat race when you understand that, crap, I'm in this game that has these artificial constraints that just aren't real. And I was never fully in control. It's somebody else that I'm doing this for. And sure, I'm getting rewarded for it. But, once I hit my number, I just don't feel like I want to be giving myself to this, what I've been doing, any further. I think that's okay, and I think it's good and healthy. I think the healthiest thing would be if we can find a way to reconfigure our education system to cultivate this sense of adventure and curiosity in young people from a very young age all the way through to adulthood.
Because the thought that comes to my mind is if pressure creates diamonds, in this world of absolute abundance, where does the pressure come from? We look at all of the stories of the rags to riches stories. We look at most NBA stories. They come from absolutely that. You listen to Kevin Durant's story. You listen to most of the legend stories. It comes from that, escaping the rat race or escaping their financial status, the family's financial status. And that drive, that pushes people in various different types of ways. Some resort to dealing drugs and getting into a world of crime because there's fast money there. Some others, then go, I'm going to make sure that my son has basketball classes and, all that type of stuff, or make sure that he pursues excellence in the arena of sport. But it's driven from one of, let's get out of here and go enter into that other realm. Now, if everyone gets elevated to that realm already, I guess this might be rooted in the most prolific religion across the world, which is Judeo-Christian type values. If we draw that analogy, if you're already in heaven, where do you go next? Like, you're already in heaven.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that that's heaven, the idea of having our physiological needs more readily taken care of. Let's go back to, and I keep talking about slavery, right? But let's go back to slavery, when the unit of labor, the agents that people in power would put to work were slaves, by and large, right? That era, we had people who were physically coerced, psychological, physical coercion to perform labor for me, the individual in power. And later we realized that, oh, wait, we actually don't have to beat them, kill them, threaten them, chain them. That's a lot of work to do all of that. It's actually more affordable and more scalable to pay them, but pay them just so much that they're kind of barely getting by. And then you enter this competitive market where people are willing to pay more, and so people jump ship, and so you got to make adjustments. But very few companies are setting their compensation tremendously high. I think
Unless
that
you're an AI engineer, then this day and age, holy heck, some of those pay packets for AI engineers, jeez.
yeah. If you're Alexander Wang,
Oh yeah, don't get David started on Alexander Wang, everyone.
I probably shouldn't have. I don't know him personally, and I haven't spoken with him, so he may be a lot more intelligent than I give him credit. He very likely is more intelligent than I give him credit for. Oh, I've lost my train of thought.
Shit, my bad. But
You got me started on Alexander Wang.
here's the thing, though, right? Like, if we follow Elon's stance on this, he's saying cost of everything comes down, and most humans will get to live in that world of like abundance. So that's the analog that I was making in terms of if you're already in heaven, if everything you already have abundance.
What is that heaven? Because I think at that point, the sheer lack of intention and obstacle becomes the enemy. And here's the point I was making, that we went from physical coercion to now effectively physiological needs tied to economics, like tied to dollars. So the two were commingled, and that became the whip. And I think that now we're moving into a realm where we're realizing that if we can deliver physiological needs related abundance, what then follows is meaning. And this lack of meaning, now instead of some artificially contrived means of to drive productivity, I think what we get is a system where people are deeply naturally motivated for very positive reasons to create. And people will still be tormented because we'll still want to be impressive, because you think about what are the peacocking things that young men do in order to attract a mate, and vice versa as well. Social attainment, having a track record of accomplishing, like going out for the hunt and bringing something back. Like these artifacts that we create, these living things that we create, these pieces of art, business, poetry, whatever it may be that we create, these become the artifacts that become our peacock feathers, right? So I think that there still will be struggle. It just won't be struggle to the point of, hey, if you don't find a way, your kids are going to starve. That just seems a little medieval at this point.
And do you believe that that state that you mentioned, where the search for meaning becomes the chosen struggle or the chosen path, do you believe that would be where most of humankind would exist? That's the part I'm wrestling with.
The really unfortunate reality is that because of the way that we've programmed society, I think that the somewhat majority, and potentially the vast majority of people, will not. Somewhere from the slight majority to the vast majority are going to be doing what that gluttonous guy in Ready Player One did with a VR headset, just sucking up all of these abundant resources because it's abundant. Like I can have like, what is it in the Hunger Games? I'm looking for some very accessible cultural references here. In the Hunger Games, depending on the district you live in, there are people who will just live with, like, they'll be incredibly gluttonous, eat, they just gorge themselves, and then they'll pop a pill to vomit it back up just so that they can be more gluttonous. And I think that's probably the very, it's dark, but without some fundamental change, people are going to be doing that.
And this is where the conversation gets really interesting, right? Because the question I have on my mind is it a fundamental change? Will a fundamental change, say, for example, like what we've advocated for several times across our chats together, which is at the education level, at the societal level, will that address what we just mentioned around the vast majority? Or is this, or do we chalk it up to this phenomenon being human nature? That it's baked into human nature, that trending in an environment of absolute abundance, human nature tends to trend towards gluttony, or tends to trend towards opting for non-struggle. For any given person, I would imagine that if you gave them two paths, here's a life of struggle. Would you, maybe if we did a Vox Pop poll, would you prefer the life you have now for the regular layperson? Would you rather the life you have now or be born with a silver spoon in your mouth? I really wonder how many would opt for door number two, which is, I wish that I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I wish I was born to a sheikh, like some Saudi sheikh as my parents, so that I can have life kind of laid out for me in that type of a way. Would you rather struggle to get your CEO position or a high status in a company, or if nepotism was available to you, would you take that path? I wonder what the split would be if we managed to get a 100% survey response rate across the world. Further to that also, if we look at developed Western societies in today's snapshot relative to developing nations, look at look at the past few years. In the developed nations, there was no identity politics issue, right? There was none of that. There was no
They were more concerned about very practical things like putting food on the table.
Right. Exactly. Having to wake up every morning and go, where the hell do I even get my clean water? I got to go walk a few miles to the well, the village well, get that water, bring it back, put the pills in there that the WHO gave me, or boil the water, whatever it might be. It didn't trend towards, I don't know if there was this one YouTube video that went somewhat viral where it was a town hall meeting between young progressives, and the person facilitating the meeting was just trying to calm everyone down and opened up the floor to questions. And all the questions were, hey, listen, I am sound sensitive. Please be careful of your pronouns. Don't misgender. All those conversations, that took up the entire town hall meeting.
Yeah.
And so my mind goes to, yes, there are so many possible futures right now. It's very interesting to be able to do a thought experiment and actually explore what those potential futures might be, looking at the current fabric of society and where just even the past few years, and look at the restlessness that came out of the last few years also in somewhat stable Western civilizations, where people just get restless and start wars, or at least the people in power get restless and start wars.
Yeah.
So it really makes me wonder.
Even Socrates argued against, he put his life on the line, arguing against, making a strong case against facets of democracy. He argued that, in a situation where we had this realm of abundance, right? Like at some point, democracy just leads to the people being in power not being very competent, and instead being very persuasive, being, you've got your prototypical 6 foot, a kind of chiseled jaw man, the right amount of muscle, who speaks forcefully. These are the probably the things that are going to get someone elected over someone who's tremendously cerebral. And that's problematic, because really it's the guy who puts out the right image and then
Yes.
says the things that makes people feel good, doesn't make them think, because
Who's got the
thinking
best
is
spin?
hard.
Yeah, who's got the
And
best
he was
spin?
put to death by vote.
Right. Right.
Because people didn't want to think about the uncomfortable truth of what was happening. And we're in this situation where AI is bringing a tremendous amount of abundance. I am absolutely certain that AI will bring abundance. And it really is. We've already seen transportation costs in a very spiky way in some municipalities have come down dramatically. I'm still paying over $50 for my Ubers, but same Uber elsewhere is like $5 because of same ride share is like $5 because of autonomous driving, which is largely driven by advances in AI. I think that advanced construction techniques are already available. Robots for construction are already available. It's spiky because some jurisdictions allow more autonomous building, some don't. And I think that we've got a ton of regulations in different municipalities where people want to live, and people want to live in those places because as yet they are tethered to locations for reasons of work, faith, friendship, etc. I think that we're going to gradually see people moving into more permissive jurisdictions. And then food prices are absolutely going to come down because, like RFK has advanced, like let's stop spraying indiscriminately our crops and let's get these robot lasers to do precision pesticide deployment, right? Or precision pest remediation, zap the bugs. And you could do precision watering, precision fertilization, all of this. You can have machines doing the harvesting instead of having illegal immigrants doing the harvesting. And why do you have the illegal immigrants? You have them because people don't want those jobs. People in America have decided those are not human jobs. And people in America have effectively decided these are not human jobs. They are subhuman jobs. And that says something about the illegal immigrants, how they view them. I think that, yeah, with the deployment of these technologies, we're absolutely going to see an abundance era that we're moving into. So I'm not worried about inflation. I'm worried about deflation. And in that, against that backdrop, it really is truly a massive mobilization of AI for good that I think needs to take place at 3 levels. So at the enterprise level, I think that there are a lot of large companies that don't really deserve to be large companies. It's hard to become a large company, but a lot of, like, heck, you look at BlackBerry. They squandered away their lead. And it happens time and time again. Some companies are big just because they are big. I think that we're going to see a tremendous amount of efficiency in the market overall when these large companies become necessarily smaller. Some will cease to exist because they just don't know how to deploy AI to truly automate the things that matter. And those people will be free to create something of their own. Jason Calacanis said something really good. I think it was on a recent episode of All In podcast. He said, if you've recently been laid off, go out and find 2 to 3 people who were also recently laid off and start a revenge company. Now, I don't think revenge is really the right motivator, but where he's coming from is like,
Don't get mad
get
at
off
Eve.
your ass. Yeah, like you are so powerful. You don't understand how powerful you are because you understand how that company works. You understand what the boss didn't understand. So guess what? It's their loss, and you can make them feel the pain of your loss by kicking their asses. And AI really puts these people into that position. So that's I guess at the enterprise layer. In order to do that, though, companies are going to need to learn how to learn where their valuable data is, and learn how to retrieve that data using contextual retrieval, using agentic search, and using knowledge graphs. So that's one area that I do a little bit of work in. The second area that I think is really, really important in order to move society forward closer towards many humans having meaning in the abundance era is the micro enterprise, small teams, solo founders. And that's the core work of Vanka, where we are slowly but surely building out automations to deal with a lot of the mundane, whether it's your accounting, whether it's your contract review, whether it's your automated bill payments, your tax filings, all this stuff. Like the stuff that people who are starting a business really don't want to spend a lot of time on because that's not where the value creation is. So if we can automate all that, we get rid of a lot of the failure modes from founders spending their precious time on the wrong things. So that's the small business layer, where I think that I deeply believe that if we can free the human operator up to focus on the things that really matter, they'll be more successful. And then the third layer, which I think is the biggest opportunity, is actually the individual, empowering the individual with AI to learn across a massive surface area. Think like the humanities last exam, HLE, which is used by, it's used to benchmark AI and AI's performance to kind of ability to move towards what they call artificial general intelligence. I think that we can take the breadth of that and the depth of it as well, and build curriculum around that to let people, normal people, regardless of age, learn anything they want through any lens that they want. If they want to learn about basketball through the lens of physics, you can absolutely do that. If you want to learn about physics through the lens of basketball, you can. If you want to learn about geometry through the lens of soccer, you can absolutely do that. Like whatever it is that like if you want to learn about biology through the lens of fly fishing, you can do that, right? So there's so much that we can do if we can take the entire breadth of human knowledge and allow people to just go as wide as they want, as deep as they want, at their own pace. I think that we owe that to young people. And if they can then in turn believe they can learn anything, my gosh, people are going to be in a much better place in their prime to create value. So those are the three layers of AI work that I believe to be truly important when it comes to impact. All the stuff around like open weights, like fine-tuning models and all that, like we've already made massive strides in that area. I think that large language models are only going to be one of the big areas of artificial intelligence. But even there, like I think the folks that are working on that are going to keep working on that. Let them work on that. I'm talking about social impact, and where all the real money is going to be, it's going to be in these three areas.
Just because we in the near future we will be able to, as a regular layperson, learn anything in the modality that we want to learn. Do you think we will? Again, speaking for broadly humankind.
Yeah, I think most people would, especially if we start early, because if we think about just the sheer curiosity of every single kid that I've met. If you look at a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, they are inherently curious. If you can meet them where they are.
At that age, yeah, right. At that age.
And in those formative years, if the pattern of curiosity is reinforced enough by society, I believe that curiosity will carry forward. We are beating it out of these kids at a very young age. I think that this is worse than putting your hand into a fist and physically beating children. What we're doing, we are beating the curiosity out of our children, and that is wrong. It is worse than physical abuse.
Yes. Yeah, wow. It really does make me wonder, just overlaying Ray Dalio's debt cycle theory, it really does make me wonder what this does to the playing field a decade from now, 2 decades from now, in terms of who the superpowers are in the world, or whether it's even going to look like that. You know, a few episodes ago, we talked about China and how like everyone has their own like Chinese lobster, open claw. Back when open claw was going absolutely bananas.
And that's died down a lot recently.
It has, I think, in no small measure because Claude just went ham with dropping their features, and also because Claude also went, guess what? You can't plug your fixed subscription into it as well, so you got to pay per use now. I think those two things hand in hand did a bit of damage there. But yeah, it does make me wonder. It does make me wonder what that looks like. Also, you know, overlaying the debt cycle where superpowers get to a certain place. Again, you just overlay that human nature of complacency and internal divide and all that other stuff that's happening, and which one would come up. Hence the AI race being a very real thing getting spoken about in political realms also at the same time, in political competitiveness. It's a fascinating time to to engage in these thought experiments. I think also because of the fact that society at large is just not cognizant of all this stuff that's happening by and large in the background.
Yeah.
Like by and large.
I think even the people who are like we look to as the thought leaders, a lot of them aren't thinking about what's truly important. A lot of our politicians who are thinking about kind of building a competitive advantage against China, for example, they're thinking about data centers, they're thinking about chips, they're thinking about memory, they're thinking about electricity, they're thinking like these are the things that the levers that they're thinking of. And I think even China, like the whole thing about Taiwan, how the US wants Taiwan to be independent, right? Because that's where all of the chips are manufactured. And, China would love to take over Taiwan to get access to those chips. But here's the thing. Very soon, the most advanced chips are going to be effectively everywhere, right? I think that there's probably a 5 to 10 year period where there's going to be some bumpiness around it, but China's no slouch. I think China's absolutely going to have very advanced chip making capabilities if they don't already, and they may very well have them already. And I think Chamath has talked a little bit about China's chip-making capabilities on the All In Pod as well. I think that certainly China has an energy advantage. They invested heavily in energy before the U.S., both these more green tech, green forms of electricity, but also nuclear. They've invested heavily, and I think the U.S. has a lot of catching up to do there. But that problem will be solved. I think the whole war in Iran is part of it is, hey, let's find a way to make sure these guys cannot choke the economy by restricting access to oil at like the very worst possible time. Let's try to decide when things can be constrained, and then we have some means to overcome that. So I think timing around that, it really was about being in control of the narrative. I think that these things that the politicians are arguing about, yeah, like tactically we should be doing them, right? But that's not the biggest lever. The single biggest lever at the base is how do we, like the nation that reinvents the way that it educates its young people to get to the point where its young people are 10 times, 100 times more capable, more multi-domain intelligent. That nation is going to be the next superpower. And then the layer above that, so that's like foundational layer stuff. The layer above that, which nations have built the means to get rid of as much of the bureaucracy and the friction and the sticky, icky garbage in business. You look at just regulation, right? Some countries are very, very dense. Some jurisdictions, like Massachusetts in the United States, is famous for having a ton of regulations, right? They are now dead last in the United States for company formations. They used to be one of the top in the country. And this change happened in just a couple of years. Why? People who are starting a business can't be dealing with the plaque, just the institutional plaque of all of these regulations. Like if you're opening a restaurant, you've got to cut through all this red tape. It's no wonder it's hard to find a great place to eat in one of the biggest cities and one of the most influential cities in the United States. It's just too hard for a guy who really wants to cook great food.
Sure.
He's got too much other bullshit to think about.
Right.
So guess what? He's going to pick up and go to a place like Las Vegas,
sure,
where there's very little of that. And he's going to make great food there. So guess what? Las Vegas, which is tiny compared to, relatively speaking, just has a much better food scene. So yes. I think that getting rid of, regulatory, I guess friction is one thing, but just day-to-day business, how many businesses really need to be thinking about all of the bullshit that's involved in business? Not the real value creation. I would argue that if you are a business that is not spending 95% of your time on the actual creation of value, right? Making this thing better. If you are not in Kill Bill, Satoru Hanzo, just beating away at that sword, taking it to perfection. If you are not that guy, you really shouldn't be in business. You really shouldn't. Because it's all this other inefficient stuff, all this
noise.
Yeah,
you don't get to work on the signal, right? You're just stuck in the noise.
Yeah, so that's the number 2 layer that I think is the most influential, and that's the layer that Vanka works at. And I believe the countries that embrace that ethos of streamlining, automating with AI and deterministic methods as well, as much of this bullshit as possible, these are the countries that will also take a leap forward. And then the kind of top of market, as I mentioned earlier, in large enterprise, the large enterprises, because they have an outsized impact on the economy today. Improving a small number of them can make a country much stronger. And so these large companies, I think that today, very few large companies outside of tech and a little bit, no, I'd say very few companies large companies outside of tech are applying AI effectively. And I think that this is simply because of 2 things. One, a lot of big companies don't deserve to be big because they don't understand themselves, right? And then 2, I think that a lot of the leading edge of applied AI is geared towards technology because guess what? It's made by the tech guys. So it's just that's where the impact is being made. But we're starting to see that change because the biggest change announcements from Claude these days, from Anthropic, are around Claude for law, Claude for finance, Claude for, and now small business. So I think that the easiest
Trickle
layer
down.
for yeah. The easiest layer to make a big impact in is enterprise, because small number of companies, massive impact. The second most difficult layer would be small business because they're just messy. There's so many of them, lots of different failure modes, lots of kind of. I think the folks starting small businesses traditionally haven't been high IQ in certain modalities. Like there's certain modalities of intelligence weren't
Like
their
business
strengths.
nouns, right?
Yeah. So I think that the folks that were in the traditional way, super intelligent or not super, like moderate to highly intelligent, like if you were highly capable and you like walked the correct path, you're probably going to end up in a big company, right? So I think there was a matter of selection. And I don't think that's so bad because these people here, if we can automate away a lot of the bullshit, then they can just focus on being super creative. And then also the other reason why the small business layer is something that's going to be so consequential is we're seeing large companies lay off their traditionally intelligent people. And so that traditional competence needs to find a place to go. Some of them are going to find other big companies to go to, but many of them are going to find
Revenge companies.
Yeah, revenge companies or passion companies, or as I mentioned in the Leveling Thesis Part 1 on my Substack, I talk about how these people are being farmed. Their humanness is being farmed.
Yeah.
Meta is logging all of the keystrokes and mouse movements of their employees. Factory workers.
Not going so
India.
hot, by the way. Not going so hot, Zuck.
Yeah, so I think that kind of employment is there, but it's going to be short-lived because guess what? It's like suck the expertise, suck the humanness out of their brains, then discard them. Like empty husks is really the playbook for. And I just don't see. I think that, and this trickles down to my first Substack post about the hard thing about AI labor data. I agree that like net, we're seeing job creation right now, right? But that hides the truth of what's happening. A large number of these jobs are really just companies sucking the humanness out of their workers, preparing to discard them. A large number of these jobs are around copilot AI. And if you believe that agentic AI is going to happen, well, a short-term blip in copilot AI related where human and AI work side by side, that's not fundamental, right? So I'm not saying that humans are going to be out of work, period. I'm saying that humans will, like we are moving into post-employment, which means no longer being an employee slave. It is you entering the equity economy, owning your time, owning your work, expressing, interacting with the world and synthesizing and expressing, iterating. That's the world that we're moving towards. And so I think that I'd love to see, I think we're going to have the majority of people who are laid off, or somewhere around half the people who are laid off. I think they're going to find self-employment, creating their own businesses. Another half are going to be just doing as they do, consuming, unless we can change the education system and the cultural expectations. They'll embrace gluttony. And I think that there's already a cohort or a segment of society that is conditioned around just taking government assistance and
Sure.
criminality, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think that they're going to continue just being, of course, they're going to dive into
Like
gluttony.
that segment's always going to be,
more and more handouts.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's another one for you. Do you think that there could be a possibility, or what do you think the probability is that AI adoption is going to look like blockchain technology adoption in today's form, where they're still talking about how do we find the consumer on-ramp? This whole hot wallet, cold wallet thing is still an issue. You know, you've got the crypto.coms that try to bring the layperson on, but for the most part, it's a select few that are familiar with it, select enterprise that use it at the blockchain level of technology. Then you've got the whole cryptocurrency layer of it, where you got the punchers and you got the whales and you got the people that actually understand it from a technological standpoint. But for the most part, the on-ramp is still challenging for the regular consumer to get onto. So they're just, like, I guess just like small-time punters.
Yeah.
Do you see that? And I'm only bringing this up because I'm currently witnessing my wife, Natalie. Nat has chronic fatigue. She's going through perimenopause. She also has a few other like health chronic stuff. And she's been using Gemini just because we've been gaslit by enough doctors and disinterested general practitioners to go, oh yeah, it must be this. And then we go, we can't find our own Dr. House here in Australia who wants to really get down to it. So she's resorted to the Gemini thing. And she's learned a lot already about context management, memory management, and how it hallucinates and how it makes shit up and forgets day to day and that. But outside of that use case, she had no other use case to really jump in and understand those nuanced things. Meanwhile, you've got people in tech, in digital marketing, in those realms who are going deep, and almost first week the work that they do forces them to understand context management, et cetera, already. And I remember a time not so long ago where all the VCs and everyone coming out of Silicon Valley was like, blockchain is going to be the thing. Everyone's going to have, now the term is everyone's going to have their own agents. Back then the term was everyone's going to have their own, like imagine being able to tokenize yourself and then having that as a currency, and based off of your followership, your token can accrue value, and now it becomes open market. It's a very exciting time, right? So where do you think, what do you think the probability is of it ending up like blockchain, where it might be still, because it's created by people in tech and primarily used by people in tech, that it becomes just slightly technically out of reach for the majority of the population, the small business owners who aren't exactly tech savvy, who aren't in there sitting in a laptop, they don't even know what terminal is.
So I think about crypto in this way, and I'm not a crypto expert. I deliberately stayed away from it, but from what I've assessed, it's a ledger, and I think, okay, that could be useful, but there are other ways to do ledgers. So it doesn't have to be the blockchain. And is having a ledger in and of itself, enough to be transformative? I don't think so. I really don't. I was talking to one of the biggest used car platforms in South Korea, and the CEO there was saying to me that he envisioned an evolution of his platform where every single car was tokenized and the service records for every car was tokenized and everything. I just thought, I mean, yeah, but you could just have a ledger for it. It's fulfilling the same function. So I just didn't see any breakthrough applications for blockchain. Like, it didn't seem like a breakthrough technology. Now, AI, I view differently. I think if you are an individual who is accustomed to and fluent in the idea of putting other people to work, I think it's a very natural transition to think about how to put AI to work when it starts performing, when you deal with the hallucination, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it starts to work. I think that the real gap is less about being tech savvy and more about imagine suddenly you were given a staff of 1,000 people. Let's say you were given a staff of 600 software engineers, 100 product managers, 100 admin related people, and they fill in the rest with miscellaneous, right? Like the other stuff, like
designers and
security guys. You've got just whatever. So you've got your staff, like that's your 1,000 people. You've got your executive assistants in there. You've got your just everything. Your marketing guys in there, your sales guys are in there. So you've got your 1,000 people staff. So D, you have a 1,000 person staff right now. These people are all waiting to hear from you what they're supposed to do. How much time would it take you to figure out what to do with those 1,000 people?
Yesterday.
Okay.
You know what
So
I mean? Like,
I would say that most human beings, let's say most Western society educated or developed nation educated. I would say even if you took the top 10% of educated people in developed nations, I would say the majority of those people would be complete. Let's say 9 out of 10 of those people who are in the top 10% of educated people in highly developed nations would not have a clue about how to put those 1,000 people to work.
how to deploy, right?
They would be out of their depth. They wouldn't know what to say to these people. They wouldn't know what to tell them to do. They wouldn't know why they're telling them to do something. It would just be, holy shit, I need some help right now.
Right.
Or holy shit, I don't know what to do.
Right.
Or, maybe it's, okay, well, somebody get me a latte. Or
right.
I need a massage.
Right. The most menial, right.
Or it'd be nice if I had a staff of people opening doors for me wherever I went.
Right.
I think I need a security team. Oh, I need a Gulf Stream.
Right.
Somebody get me a Gulf Stream. Like it's just.
Yeah.
I think that's like.
I want someone to book my
gluttonous side,
holidays
right?
for me.
Yeah. I think that there's just what is in here
Right.
is highly constrained in most people, even when we say the top 10% of educated people in the most developed nations, the majority of them wouldn't know what to do. And this is why I think agentic AI is hard to wrap the heads around for. Yep.
Yes, which is exactly why I asked I was curious on your take on the abundance question because of this. I just imagine if we can just paint a picture, I just imagine, in Toy Story, you've got those small little green Martians in the claw thing, all looking up at one big master, 1,000 agents going, the claw. And we just go, I don't know, as you were. That's the best, that's the best we can do.
Exactly why I say that the number one thing that countries need to occupy themselves with right now is figuring out how to transition the minds of their young people from one of following orders, playing by the rules, following the procedure. From that mindset, the peasant mindset, the peon mindset, the lemming mindset, the NPC mindset, the bot mindset, that mindset to main character mindset.
Sure.
I have a vision mindset. To I am going to experience the world and synthesize and express mindset. This is something that is eminently teachable, especially when we start early because they have the curiosity.
And with practice too, right? So instead of practicing and continually using the muscle of receiving direction, it's practicing and flexing the muscle of setting direction and the discomfort of, wait a second, open brief. And we've I think in most people's careers, or even if you're just a layperson who has never, maybe someone in college who has never worked in a corporate environment yet, we would have seen enough reality TV shows, like cooking ones or whatever it might be, where open brief tends to be the thing that confuses most contestants. They go like, wait, anything? Yeah, anything. Oh, crap. Now, my vocabulary is getting tested here, as opposed to give me a theme, give me a brief, give me some type of guardrail, some type of boundary box to go, well, today's challenge is you're cooking. We want everyone to cook, I don't know, like your favorite family memory meal. Okay, I've got something. But if it's open brief, people lose their marbles a little bit. Yeah, I love that. That makes I love that take. Absolutely.
So I think that stuff's a lot more important than the Musk v. Altman trial, but I think that bears some discussion as well. What a doozy. Like, the people who are on the stand in that trial.
Fill me in. I have not. I've heard
richest man in the world on trial.
I have not followed the rest of it so far.
The jury is going to put forward their recommendation probably sometime within the next week, and then the judge is going to.
Wow.
It doesn't need to abide by the jury's recommendations. The judge will take that under advisement and then issue a verdict. I think that nobody's come out a big winner here, but like even before the verdict is delivered, and any restitution, if any, is decided, or if any kind of penalties are levied, I think looking at what's happened, Elon Musk he's won the bigger battle, the meta battle, in the sense that he's
The narrative,
really
yeah.
painted Sam Altman in a very negative light. And I think that the idea of honesty is, and just not like your little white lies or like the omissions or like the spin, anything like that, but like outright misrepresentations. And going back to, like, there was a period when Sam Altman was dismissed from OpenAI by the board. And so a lot of that testimony went on record. And I think he was dismissed because of like an integrity, honesty perception issue. But, a lot of this is he said, she said, like a lot of people just giving testimony. I think the one thing that was pretty damning was the diary that was written by Brockman over at OpenAI. But all that said and done, I think that ultimately right now Polymarket is saying that Elon Musk is going to lose the trial itself. And Polymarket, I think, probably has a good pulse on this. I'm not a big fan of Polymarket, but I think that it is somewhat useful for things like this, because you've got, and in this case, I don't think that the justice system is so, there's no massive perversion of the justice system in the United States, I believe. So I think that it's hard for Polymarket to have an insider on this. But I think that there's enough expert commentary that has put dollars where their mouths are. So I think the main issues are that there's a statute of limitations on the things that Elon Musk is suing for. And Elon Musk has also separately acknowledged that there's a need to have a for-profit arm. So for these reasons, I think it's going to be hard for him to come out on top. And that seems to be the prevailing winds on Polymarket.
Yeah. But in the court of public opinion, Altman's not looking too hot right now.
Yeah, and I think that really the reason why I think that Musk has won the meta battle is that he's now taking SpaceX and XAI public before OpenAI, and I think that he's going to suck up a lot of the capital before Altman does. And I think that play, combined with Musk's singular ability to put data centers in space and generate electricity in space, like these are things that give Musk a tremendous advantage. And I think that XAI is a company SpaceX AI is a company to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking about data centers, also Kevin O'Leary's made news recently about his data center in Utah and all the protests that are happening and all the energy consumption that it's going to make and all that. Data centers is and it's funny. It's funny listening to someone talk about data centers and job creation, since data centers are also known to be the thing to take away jobs in other sectors. So using that as the primary kind of spin there, or like press release, is also a funny thing that's happening too.
Yeah, data centers, I think, unfortunately, it's unfortunate that there's this big debate over it and a big controversy over it, but it's simply a requirement, right? Like, there was a lot of short-sighted emotional thinking around nuclear, and that put the US at a massive disadvantage. If we do not invest in data centers in any country, right, that puts that country at a tremendous disadvantage, and it does not do right by its people if they do not invest in data centers. I think the US is exceptionally positioned because of Musk and, by extension, the US's ability to build data centers in space. So yeah, I think build data centers now, build energy capacity now, invest heavily in solar, because it's how you take residential kind of strain off the grid, and it creates a reason for, well, it alleviates a reason for citizens to be complaining. And in the next 5 to 10 years, I think that a lot of the pressure will be alleviated when we have data centers built in space.
Yeah. Godspeed, Elon. That's going to be a big leap forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if we think back to why OpenAI was founded, Elon Musk famously used to sleep on Larry Page's couch, right? Or like sleep over at his house because he didn't have a place to live. It's like a luxury kind of homelessness, right? But they were clearly friends. And then at a birthday party, there was this big falling out where Elon Musk raised concerns about AI safety. And Larry Page's position was, well, what if humans don't deserve to prevail? What if AI should prevail? And I think that Elon Musk took tremendous issue with that. And I'm paraphrasing, so I could be off by a little bit. But at this party, Page accused Musk of being a speciesist, like a racist, but species. Like you're
sure.
Why are you advocating for the human race over the AI race? Like this species doesn't necessarily deserve to prevail over this other species.
Just, regular dinner party conversation.
Yeah. So I think that was the impetus for forming OpenAI as a nonprofit. So when we think about that, and I think about the integrity with which Musk is doing business, and even with the acquisition of Twitter, like he got rid of a lot of the feel good dishonesty and put into place an actual mechanism for safety. Now, there is no perfect safety system in social networks, right? Absolutely not. But I would argue that the safety systems and the truth mechanisms that Elon Musk has put into place with X, on X, formerly known as FKA Twitter, are vastly superior to hiring an army of people to apply their own subjective and personal filters on the idea of safety, right? Mm-hmm. So now you end up with because I think of the kind of safety mechanisms that were on Twitter. And I think that the Twitter era of safety on social media led to a view of transgenderism, for example, that actively promoted it, that led to, I think it's in British Columbia in Canada, and I'm a Canadian. So in British Columbia, it got to the point where if there was a child in elementary school who was saying that they believe that they are, if it's a little girl who says, I believe I'm a boy, the school was forbidden from telling the parents that they were helping to arrange for medical treatment for that child. Like things like that start to come into place because now you've got these like gender politics, these identity politics, these LGBTQ politics that, like, if a person is divergent, let them be divergent. But to actively create a culture of shifting people to these alternative paths, I think it's not a thing that should be actively, I think that we can be understanding of people who take a different path. But I think that we went a little bit too far. And I think that it's very important that the Twitter acquisition and the transition to X led to a situation where something like community notes could be put into place to better monitor and better guide the idea of truth over the personal opinions of somebody sitting behind a computer.
Yeah.
So I say all of this to say that I believe that for this reason around this emphasis on truth, as well as Elon Musk's prescient security concerns around AI, and early on, even putting friendship on the line in favor of Team Human, I think these are the reasons why I think it's important that X is given an honest chance, or SpaceX AI is given an honest chance to become one of the dominant frontier models in the United States.
Yes. Back to OpenAI. What do you remember? Whatever happened to? I forget if she was head of AI safety, but that lady that left and started off her own AI labs. I wish I could remember.
Right. Yeah. Mira Murati. Yeah.
Yes.
I think she's raised a couple $2 billion. I don't know the details of what she's working on, but yeah, there were some concerns. And I think that Murati testified at the Musk v. Altman trial as well. So just a lot of sauciness going on there.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's a whole drama. But on the topic of OpenAI, interestingly, I've recently switched to Codex from Claude Code because I hit some limits and I couldn't sign up for a second Claude Code subscription. So I tried GPT and it's been working fantastic. I have a feeling it's because Claude Code leaked. And so OpenAI was able to take all the things it does well and then also layer in the things that Claude Code did well.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love Reddit, because in the Claude Code subreddit and in the vibe coding subreddit are the noisiest people, I guess, in most communities. The noisiest people are the complainers. So even before it hits, my personal lived experience, I'll hear all these complainers go like, Claude Code is absolutely cooked now, and this, that, and the other. There's throttling our stuff, and making recommendations to jump into Codex. I haven't had the need to jump into Codex yet, but I've heard great things that it's doing the job well.
I'm so sorry. I got to grab the door. I'll be right back. So we were live, and I had to hop away for a second. There's some construction going on here, and I'm the only one in the building.
No, yeah, they were fine. Everyone.
The throngs of listeners were listening to your monologue, weren't they?
Yeah, I just said what my teacher used to say: speak amongst yourselves.
Yeah. So the changes to OpenAI Codex have been really impressive, and kind of from there, something I'm looking forward to checking out is Grok, because Grok has released on Grok Super Heavy AI coding. What do they call it? Grok Build. So I am looking forward to trying out Grok Build as well, because they entered into a special relationship with Cursor. Have you heard about the Cursor deal with?
No. I heard about the Anthropic deal.
Yeah, so SpaceX has a $60 billion agreement to acquire Cursor, but there's a timeline in which they're supposed to acquire them. But if they don't acquire them within that timeline, they pay a $10 billion fee.
Man.
So I think they're starting to benefit from that relationship.
There's an eye-watering amount of money.
Yeah. So I think that what we're seeing is Grok Build is likely going to be, I haven't tried it, but I imagine it has a real shot at being impressive, partly because Cursor having a lot of the data around the inputs that agentic engineering users or vibe coding users, they've just got a tremendous amount of data around how it's being used. But also Claude Code, again, leaked. And so anybody has access to the secret sauce of Claude Code. And I imagine OpenAI was unscrupulous about using it, and like it was in the wild, like looking at it and understanding the patterns.
And I'm sure China.
I don't think it's wrong to look at it once it's in the public domain, right? Like once it's there, looking at it and seeing what the patterns are should be fine. If you're reusing those patterns yourself, like just verbatim copying it over, absolutely, that's got to be wrong. But I have to wonder because there had to have been outright corporate espionage even at this level happening in some companies, right?
I believe it. I absolutely believe
it. Not
all,
all, but some.
Like, and you best believe if OpenAI was looking at it, China was looking at it.
Yeah. It was out there. Everybody had access to, like, you'd hop onto GitHub and look for Claude Code leak, and it was there. So the odds of Grok Build being very good are pretty healthy. So something definitely worth trying out, and pitting them against each other, or even just building the same thing 3 separate times, or having them kind of red team each other or support each other. Like, there's so many interesting ways to leverage now these subscriptions where you have multiple Mac Minis, right? You don't need multiple Claude Code or Claude 20x subscriptions. You could work with one Claude 20x, one Grok Heavy, Super Heavy, and one GPT. What do they call it? What's the price plan called?
Plus
GPT Pro. Yeah, GPT Pro 20x. Yeah, they've got the $100 tier and the $200 tier. So yeah, I think you use separate accounts. I got lucky. Was able to get a second Mac Mini, the M4 Pro. M4 Pro base model, but I got it for regular retail. It was the only one in the country.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that absolutely?
And you've got guys selling them on eBay for 150%, 200%.
Yeah, this is a complete tangent, but I look at Apple and I go, that phenomenon right here truly is the power of brand. There is no reason whatsoever why the Mac Mini should be out. Like PC computers, there are a ton that are way cheaper that can do a whole bunch, but somehow the mass market just goes, I want a Mac Mini.
Well, here's why I think the Mac Mini is better for this. You can run it 24 hours a day. I think the fan doesn't kick in as much as it needs. Like, it's a very efficiently built machine. I think that it's an engineering marvel, and for that reason, you get almost like server class hardware for consumer pricing. So I've got mine. I've got two of mine connected to an uninterruptible power supply with batteries baked into it. So if there's a power outage, I'm in Andover, Mass. There are regular power outages whenever squirrels bite, kind of nibble through the wires, and you hear it too, and you smell it too. It's like barbecue.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
So yeah, I've got it behind one of those, and I've got solar panels. One Anker Solix solar panel, and spare battery as well. So if I need to keep it running, I can. And I've just been grinding away 18 hours a day on Claude Code and Codex. Codex more so these days.
What are the main processes that you have that need that always on persistence? Is it just background jobs running all the time?
So I start by building a very large specification of what I'm working on. And the jury is still out on whether my method is going to work or not, right? But what I've noticed in vibe coding is that you end up with a lot of slop decisions that create a lot of technical debt. And technical debt accumulates very quickly when you're vibe coding because you're like, it's not human speed. The debt accumulates exponentially.
Yes.
You see it in weeks as opposed to in months or years in human scale. You see technical debt become problematic, certainly in weeks. You also see, I guess, the same thing, like the same feature built, or like the same technology going into a feature built like 5 different times. So you've got like 5 features doing the same thing, 5 functions doing the same thing. And so I think that coherence is really hard to achieve when you're vibe coding, especially the bigger and bigger your project gets. So what I do is I start by building a high-level spec doc or a project overview, and then I turn it into a high-level spec doc, and then I create subspecs and subspecs to those. And so now, like a lot of what's being built, it's being specified in a ton of detail in human language in Markdown. And what that does is it gives me the ability to, without reading code, I'm just reading natural language, understand what's being built and why it's being built and which technologies are used, and ask in natural language about this. But the bigger it gets, now if you've got like 500,000 words in there in this giant specification that's been built over the course of months, now I think that it starts to affect the context window. And so what I separately did is I created a knowledge graph of the specification document.
Mm-hmm.
And now different parts of the spec are deterministically expressed. Like you can get to the exact answer every single time. And when you're modifying the spec, you can leverage the graph in order to verify that it's not breaking or anything else. Then you just have to do re-extractions of the graph. And this is where, going back to your question about what do I have it doing, I'll have it re-extracting the graph against the modifications to the spec when I'm not at the computer. I'll have it kind of look for incoherencies. I'll have it write extensions to the spec and then check its own work. And it is incredibly, like it's like a dreadnought. It just keeps going and going and going. And yeah, when I'm building in that way, I've found that the single entry level Mac Mini that I had was inadequate. The second one that I got is it the M Pro, or that one has been better. And I've been running into fewer constraints. So I've been running into problems with not enough memory. Yes, the M4 Pro with 24 gigs. That's the one that I'm primarily working off of right now as my main.
Wow. So and you're not doing local inference, are you? You're doing cloud inference. So even with cloud inference, it was still struggling with memory.
Yeah. And granted, I had like 5 tabs running. I had like an entire graph stored in memory, and sometimes multiple. So it turned into a lot. I think that probably 2 is the sweet spot for me. I don't see myself needing another until I set up like open weights, like Quen or something like that on a Mac Studio once they release in October with hopefully Max RAM.
Yes.
So we'll see if I get an extra brain around that time.
Amazing.
Yeah. How about you? What's your setup?
I've actually re-centralized everything onto my main MacBook Pro.
Nice.
Obsidian being my local repo, if you will, a whole bunch of Markdown files. Because it's Obsidian Sync, because I'm paying for that, it gets mirrored onto my Mac Mini. But my entire setup right now with Claude Code sits inside of my MacBook Pro. And then if I ever wanted to, because I don't have a lot of background jobs, it's got very simple crons, QMD, reindex, all that type of stuff, and some background linting at the end of each day. That's pretty much it. But for the most part, on the MacBook Pro, and if I need to ever farm it off to the Mac Mini, everything's already set up to just go clone it over, run Claude over there, and then we're good to go. And because of Claude routines also, that it can fire off even without the main machine being on the whole time.
There's so much we are able to get done these days without having to reach out to human agents, employees working for us. but we are still at the point where we need them. And I think that folks that, like yourself, who are fluent in the ability to manage these teams, it will soon become a matter of taste and judgment in deciding, hey, this is the kind of thing I want a human agent working on. This is the kind of thing that I want an AI agent working on.
Mm.
And certainly you're going to be one of the elite in applying that precision judgment at scale.
Well, hopefully so. I am trying to surround myself with as many deep in the trenches AI natives right now, just so that I can soak up as much as possible, because it keeps moving, and there are, as the saying goes, like a dozen ways to skin a cat. You can go PostgreSQL database for having that type of indexing and chunking. For knowledge graph, you can go the Obsidian route. There's so many versions out there right now that it can also be highly overwhelming. And sometimes my tendency to overcomplicate kicks in and goes like, ooh, but if we had both as a fallback, it's like, why are we even thinking that right now? So,
Yep. I think right now when it comes to it's good to see that you're using Obsidian. I think there are probably three kinds of retrieval that would be interesting to consider situationally applying. One is contextual retrieval, and Anthropic has a cookbook for that. Google Anthropic Cookbook Contextual Retrieval. So that's one thing that could be highly consequential to people who are building AI for business applications. The other is agentic search, and then the third is knowledge graphs, GraphRag. I think that the combination of these three things, or selectively depending on what you're retrieving against and for which purpose, having all three is a superpower. And certainly for large companies, the combination of those three is highly consequential. Large companies should figure out what their kind of secret sauce and a highly valuable data is, and then build retrieval systems against those data systems or data repositories. But heck, even solopreneurs and small teams benefit from figuring out what is your data advantage and then retrieving against that. And then you'll have truthful automation. It's not perfect retrieval, right? But it's correct enough that I would argue it's correct more often than most moderately competent humans. Because a lot of humans are not competent.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So my setup's extremely basic right now. It's Obsidian paired together with Toby Lucky's QMD, and that's all I got so far, and it seems to be doing enough in terms of semantic search.
Good. Well, Dee, I know it's breakfast time for you. 6:40 in the morning for you, or is it 7:40 in the morning?
8:40 in the morning.
8:40. You're okay. 14 hours ahead.
14.
Enjoy the weekend. Happy Friday to me, and I think I'm going to go off and grab a beer.
Let's go do it.
All right. Later,
Good seeing you, my man.
There are people who put AI to work and people that AI will put out of work. The Boss Mode Podcast is for the ones who choose to be the boss.